Palestinians, they will be able to stay?
Well, they know exactly what we're doing. We're going to create something where people can live. You can't live right now in Gaza. The place is it's a horrible situation. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. So yeah, we're going to create better conditions for people. Yeah, please.
Ahead, what guarantees Hamas disarms and that Israel doesn't resume bombing once the hostages are released?
The first thing we're doing is getting our hostages back. Okay, and that's what people wanted more than anything else. They wanted these hostages back that have lived in hell like nobody has ever even dreamt possible. And after that, we'll see. But they've agreed to things, and I think it's going to move along pretty well.
But what is phase two? When does it begin?
I'm not going to talk about that because you sort of know what phase two is, but there will be disarming, there will be pullbacks, there will be a lot of things that are happening. You know, I gave you a whole list of 22 different things that will take place. And I think it'll take place, and I think you're going to end up with peace in the Middle East. But we have to get our hostages back. And we weren't going to do it at the end, we're going to do it at the beginning. We said we want them at the beginning. We're not doing it. You know, we got the hostages back. We did, as a group, with Steve and Jared and Marco and me and all of us. We got the hostages back. We got to talk about that because you sort of know what phase two is, but there will be disarming, there will be pullbacks, there will be a lot of things that are happening. You know, I gave you a whole list of 22 different things that will take.
Palestinians, they will be able to stay?
Well, they know exactly what we're doing. We're going to create something where people can live. You can't live right now in Gaza. The place is it's a horrible situation. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. So yeah, we're going to create better conditions for people. Yeah, please.
Tremendous development in the last 2 years. We fought during these 2 years to achieve our war aims. And the central one of these war aims is to return the hostages, all of the hostages, the living and the dead. And we're about to achieve that goal. We couldn't have achieved it without the extraordinary help of President Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They worked tirelessly with Ron and his team, our team. That and the courage of our soldiers who entered Gaza and the combined military and diplomatic pressure that isolated Hamas, I think, has brought us to this point. I want to personally thank both of you, Steve, Jared. It's been long hours. You worked around the clock, but not only worked, I think you put in your brains and your hearts. And we know that it's for the benefit of Israel and the United States, for the benefit of decent people everywhere, and for the benefit of these families who will finally get to be with their loved ones. And I want to thank you on their behalf as well, and on behalf of the people of Israel. Thank you.
Bringing the hostages home it's been a priority for President Trump for a very, very long time, and we've all worked very tirelessly to do that. But I really want to say that this all would not have been possible without the bravery of the IDF and the soldiers, what they've accomplished not just in Gaza, but also what they've done in the theater over the last couple of years to eliminate Hezbollah in the north and really degrade them. What you were able to do in Iran, it really helped set a big tone. But particularly seeing the way that your citizen army, I know a lot of you, probably all of you, have family, friends who were in this effort, really put your sacrifices on the line to fight for your country and to try to make a difference. I think that made a very, very big difference in there. And I want to just give a very, very special thanks to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who really did an incredible job with this and did a great job with the negotiations. You held your lines firm, and I think that between you and President Trump, you had a lot of alignment on what the end state should be.
The hard job was the Prime Minister's. He had the job of protecting this country. He had the job of making tough choices with regard to how tough to be with Hamas, when to be flexible, when not to be flexible. I think to myself all the time, I lost sleep over it. What would I have done in some of those circumstances? There were times that I thought, we should be more flexible, or your country should be more flexible. But the truth is, as I look back, I don't think we get to this place without Prime Minister Netanyahu playing it out. And I'm not just saying that. They're not just words. The president believes that. My president believes it. He believes that Prime Minister Netanyahu made some very, very difficult calls, and lesser people would not have made those calls. And here we are today because Hamas had to, they had to do this deal. The pressure was on them, they were backed up, and you've got the bigger army, you were making inroads, and that's what led to this deal.
We're at a momentous development in the last 2 years. We fought during these 2 years to achieve our war aims, and a central one of these war aims is to return the hostages, all of the hostages, the living and the dead. And we're about to achieve that goal. We couldn't have achieved it without the extraordinary help of President Trump and his team, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They worked tirelessly with Ron and his team, our team. That and the courage of our soldiers who entered Gaza and the combined military and diplomatic pressure that isolated Hamas, I think, has brought us to this point. I want to personally thank both of you, Steve, Jared. It's been long hours.
Agreed or refused to release Palestinian prisoner Marwan Barghouti. I can tell you at this point in time that he will not be part of this release. Tonight at 5 p.m. Israel time, there will be a cabinet meeting, and at 6 p.m. Israel time, there will be a government meeting taking place. Now, within 24 hours after the cabinet meeting takes place, a ceasefire will then begin in Gaza. The IDF will then redeploy to the yellow line as shown on maps, which have been widely distributed at this point in time. And now after this 24-hour period, the 72-hour time window will then begin, where all of our hostages will be released back into Israel. Now, the final draft of Phase 1 was signed this morning in Egypt by all parties to release all of the hostages. And the IDF will then redeploy to that yellow line we mentioned, which will lead to the military controlling and holding about 53% of the Gaza Strip. Now, Phase 1 stands very clear. All of our hostages, the living and deceased, will be released 72 hours later, which will bring us to Monday. Israel is preparing to receive our hostages in all conditions they may be in. This comes with the help from specialists and all main hospitals in Israel. They are ready with robust procedures that are in place.
That still needs to be done. Can you reflect on this moment, this news that we received yesterday, and the gravity of what has been accomplished so far?
Well, great to be with you, Carly. Listen, the word historic has been used a lot this morning, and it absolutely should be. This is a groundbreaking, historic political achievement based on the back end of both Israeli and even American use of military force in the region and even diplomacy in the region to really press on adversaries and allies alike to get Hamas to give up all of the hostages, both dead and remaining, and to allow really the political space to emerge to go for all of the Trump 20-point peace plan.
Yeah, and until the hostages are in the arms of their loved ones, I said it before, it feels like you're holding your breath. So desperate that this moment actually happens, and there is room for things to fall apart. How concerned are you about that?
I am concerned about the potential for things to fall apart. But not right now in the short term, meaning not in the phases that it would take for Hamas to give up those hostages, or even for the Israelis to navigate the complexity of the domestic politics that they're going to have to navigate to get this deal across the finish line. What I'm worried about is actually when the hostages come back home, because make no mistake, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the major backer of Hamas, what's left of this transnational terrorist organization, whether it's the actors of resistance groups like Hezbollah, like in Lebanon, example, the Houthis in Yemen. All of these groups are anti-American, anti-Israeli, and they're waiting for both Israel and America to go back to an October 6th mentality. So me, someone who wants all of the 20-point peace plan to be implemented, I'm waiting on seeing, how Hamas is actually disarmed and rolled back, both politically and militarily, after the hostages come home, not before.
Well, that brings us to the work that still needs to be done. And an Egyptian official said this phase one deal is really a stopgap measure to keep the talks from collapsing over more difficult issues like disarming Hamas. How difficult will this next phase of negotiations be?
I think it'll be incredibly difficult, but listen, if there's anyone who can do it, who could put the shoulder to the wheel of history, it is indeed President Trump. Again, there's been no shortages of attempts to have ceasefire agreements or prisoner swaps or hostage swaps in the past. But the thing that is fundamentally different is who is in the White House currently, who is the occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's the person who actually made sure that Israel knew that they had a partner back in the White House. That's the person who knew that the Americans took all of Israel's security concerns 100% to heart. So I believe that actually that can create the political space to do all the definitional work, to do all the political legwork, to continue the negotiations to move from phase one to phase two. But make no mistake, Hamas and its supporters are going to be dragging their feet every step of the way here when it comes to transitioning to phase two and fighting over things like definitions about disarmament and rollback and all of the kind of classic stalling tactics that we've seen in the past, because Hamas is down, but it's not out.
Well, you can't talk about this moment without going back to
The Good Guys doorbuster deals are on now. Get this Hisense front load washer $488, $1,000 off this LG 75-inch TV, $200.
Let's bring in another special guest.
Let's bring in Mike Huckabee. He's the U.S. ambassador to Israel, and he's live from the embassy in Jerusalem. Ambassador, what a historic day. Let's get your initial thoughts on this deal. How were you guys able to get this across the finish line?
Well, let's give credit where credit is due. There were a lot of people at the embassy that did a lot of just groundwork, but the real key is President Trump. He's the one that made this happen. Certainly envoys Witkoff and Jared Kushner were a very big part of sealing the deal, bringing it together. But this would never have happened without the leadership of President Trump. He brought people together that no one thought would ever sit together, talk, and come to an agreement. And it's really a remarkable day. And I'll tell you, there is a great sigh of relief being heaved throughout Israel today, because this is a day that everyone here has been praying to happen for 2 solid years.
And praying here, too, Ambassador. As you know, Americans have been praying for this. What happens next? I understand Parliament has to meet. The deal has to actually be signed.
The cabinet will meet today with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who also deserves a lot of credit for his tenacity and patience through this. Once they meet, they will sign their portion of the document, and then things will start happening. The clock starts, and 72 hours is that time frame. We should be seeing hostages come out Sunday or Monday. Right now, it's going to be according to the president's plan, not dribbled out, but all of the hostages coming out. That's how it was presented to Hamas. The president made it very clear 2 things had to happen. Hamas had to deliver all the hostages, and then they would have to recognize they don't have a future in Gaza. And the consistency and clarity of the president's message is part of the reason we're here today.
Ambassador, you know the political system as well as any American in Israel, and you know those on the right of Netanyahu want complete and total victory and don't want this deal. I know the president, the prime minister's always got to weigh those things. Politics play a role. How big are the numbers of people? What percentage of people want to just see the IDF go into Gaza City and wipe the whole thing out?
At the expense of the hostages, I don't know of anyone who honestly thinks that's a great idea. But people want the hostages out. They want this nightmare to be over. The reservists, there are thousands of Israelis who have left their families, their jobs to be called up in the reserves. Over 1,000 have died fighting in Gaza. Israelis want this to come to an end. And so if the president and prime minister can deliver that, I think the numbers of people who will say, no, we don't want that. I can't even imagine. They could probably fill a booth at a Waffle House and have room for guests.
You know, Ambassador, I don't want to invoke any negativity, but when you're dealing with Hamas, you're always on pins and needles. Are we there, or is there still the possibility of them pulling out of this? And again, I hate to introduce that portion to it, But I know radical Islam is when I see him.
Lawrence, you're like a guy that says that we just ran out of bacon for breakfast. I'm going to have to believe that there's, and by the way, there's very little bacon over here. But I think most of us are very optimistic. We believe we're on the right path. If something goes sideways, it's going to be a surprise to everyone because this right now looks like a done deal. And I've been looking forward to taking this yellow ribbon off my lapel since I arrived. And I hope that sometime between now and Tuesday, this is coming off and I'll never see it again. It will be a sign that all the hostages are home with their families. And it'll be the biggest, best day since I've been here.
Ambassador, I know you've met with a lot of the families of hostages that have been released. What's the healing process like? Because I look at these images and they've been through a lot over the last 2 years.
It's a long road ahead, Ainsley, and I'm glad you asked about those families because they have kept the vigil along with the rest of the world. But these families have been through a living hell, not knowing if their loved ones were alive or dead, and not knowing if they would live through being hostages tortured by Hamas. And that's the truth. When I hear people talk about hunger and deprivation, and you got little Greta running over here on her boat ride, it's been very frustrating because they're not talking about the people who really are starving, and that's the hostages. So when they come out, they're going to have medical treatment. There'll be an enormous level of just dealing with the post-traumatic problems they'll face psychologically from being caged. But I will say this, the Israelis are the most resilient and resolved people I think I've ever known. They will come through it, and they will live to fight another day and stand on their feet, and the world will celebrate their homecoming.